Today we're going to be restoring this Aliner 2002 Expedition camper. Things like windows, ceiling, seals, power system, interior, and more. I couldn't find a video on how to fix some of the problems I had, so we're making one today. So here we go. Here's a look of the interior beforehand. As you can see, a lot of water damage. Kind of crusty and dirty, stuff falling apart, hanging off the walls. The ceiling is delaminating a lot. Just a bunch of little things that need fixing. Here you can see the lamination on the ceiling has ripped off due to water damage, and all this needs to come off and be replaced and cleaned. So that's priority number one. Fix the leaks, fix the interior crustiness, and then go from there. First up though is to give it a wash. And there we have it. Next, as you can see, is to remove this old tape that was holding on the windows and hang out with this wasp. It helps a lot to use a scraper, like a razor blade scraper, and it also helped a lot to have the tape sit in the sun for a couple hours before doing this. The heat really helped it peel off. If you don't have the sun, of course, a heat gun or a hair dryer would do the same job. So scraping it off took a really long time. But eventually we got it off, and I was trying to be really careful with these windows because they're 20 years old. Who knows where I could get another one? It's probably expensive. So next up is to grind down the area where I'm going to put glue and tape on. This is for removing the residue and gunk that was left behind by the glue and tape and peeling paint and all of that. I used a large grit sandpaper, I think it was like 30 or 60, to really get a nice new surface that I could actually get something to stick to. On the windows themselves, I had to grind off the old glue with an angle grinder with like the flappy sandpaper disc grinder, just to again get a flat, smooth surface. And here I am polishing the windows with that plastic polish. Seems to have done something, not a whole lot though. Okay, and before reapplying the windows, clean it with isopropyl alcohol to make sure there's no residue remaining. For the glue, I used a marine adhesive sealant. Yeah, I applied it all around and placed it on the roof. I use that roll of tape as like a rolling pin to press it down a little more. And then here goes the back window. Same procedure, just make sure it's lined up. Thanks to Jenna for the help. Yep, rolled it on again, and then we're good. Windows are glued on. But we're not finished yet. I put some more of the sealant on the corners of the windows because they were cracking just a little bit. I could see some hairline cracks. Don't know if that'll help a lot, but it'll do something. Help seal out the water. Same thing on the back. To top off the night, we were visited by these cockroaches who were probably still living in the camper from Florida. Very nice. Next up is to put new tape on. I used the 4-inch Eternabond tape. Seems like it'll hold, seems like it'll last a long time. Stuff's not cheap, so just don't mess it up. Make sure you put it on straight. And yeah, windows are done. After the windows, my next move was to remove all the silicone seals around the camper, at least all the ones that looked in poor condition. So remove that with a scraper and the razor blade and paint thinner, mineral spirits. That helped a lot to get the silicone off. And then reapplied a sealant to all these joints with a sealant called Proflex RV. For me personally, it was easiest to apply it and then use my finger to make a smooth surface, replacing all those silicone seals on the roof and along the body and along the front storage compartment as well. So now that the roof is sealed up, we can move on to the water damage on the inside. As you can see, crusty, nasty, disgusting, moldy, nasty. I used a razor blade all around the edge here to remove this whole delaminated section. Just kind of peeled it off. There's the outer layer, then there's a wooden 1/8 of an inch panel underneath that's glued to the ceiling, like styrofoam layer. Once I took it apart, it turned out to be worse than I thought, which was a bummer, but what you gonna do? So I was a little overwhelmed and I didn't film fixing the ceiling on the other side, but my general procedure was this. 1, remove it like I just showed. 2, sand it down, let it dry out, make sure there's a number of dry days where it can get completely dry, and scrape off any extra pieces of wood. Do what I can to make it a smooth surface so I can work with it. From there, I purchased this stuff called Thrifty Whiteboard. It was like $20 for a 4x8 foot piece. Here's me just trimming up some of that board. I did it in like sections, which just seemed easier, 3 or 4 rectangles. And then I purchased this green stuff right here, 3M extra strength contact adhesive, the one that says number 90 on it. This seemed like the strongest stuff I could find. So now we're on to the other side, and I did the same thing. I removed all the delaminated section of the ceiling, cut a nice clean line on the top with the razor blade, sanded it down, made a nice clean surface. I cut that whiteboard to size. With the contact adhesive, you spray on both surfaces that are going to touch. You let it sit for a minute or two to become like tacky, and then you apply it, and it pretty much sticks on contact, so just like make sure it's in the right place. The wall is nearly done. So here's doing the other side. Glue that on there. I, of course, had to take off the window frames too, which I didn't show. Then here's Jenna helping me with holding up the window frame. Thanks, Jenna. While I had the window frames off, I spray painted them white just to freshen them up. In between the panels on the whiteboard, that's now the ceiling, I put white duct tape just to seal those gaps, pretty much just for aesthetics. It's not like it's holding it on there. Reapply the window frame, it just holds in there with screws, and I think it looks really nice. Much better than all that moldy damage. Once I finished the ceiling, the seasons changed, and whatever the nonsense rules are in my town, you can't have a camper on the driveway after Halloween. So when I needed to work on it, I have to put it in the garage, take it out, bring it in, and back to work. Now it's time to remove this vent and add a fan. Same procedure with the windows and the caulking. Scrape off the caulking with a razor blade and a caulking removal tool. Scrape it off, make a flat surface, use some mineral spirits to clean it up. Now we have a clean slate. So I had this problem where the fan is too thick to fit in the hole. It goes too deep and it interferes with when you close the camper. I needed to raise the rim around the hole so we had clearance and we didn't have any problems when we close it. I got this like 1/2 inch by 1 inch PVC. I knew I needed to raise it by 1 inch, so I put 2 layers of this 1/2 inch by 1 inch PVC. So I just cut sections to make it fit, stacked it up, and then moved on to gluing it. I used some of the basic construction adhesive, glue between them all, squeeze them together, let it sit overnight till they're solid. To glue it to the roof, I used that marine sealant adhesive again, put some weight on it, and let it sit. And even got a visit from the precious Meowford. She wanted to hang out and see what was going on. She needed to see if I was building up to code. Also forgot to record this, but I put new tape around the other vent on the roof. Just did 2-inch Turnabout tape around the edges to just ensure that I minimize my leakage. So now that that's dry, we brought it outside. Of course, clean it with isopropyl alcohol. Now it's time to put the fan in. So I marked all the holes with a pencil, pre-drilled them, and then put down this butyl tape. I don't know how important the butyl tape is, but that's what I saw online, what you should use for ceiling fans. So put the butyl tape in there, put the screws in, and the screws like squeeze down the butyl tape. Okay, we're all screwed in. Here we are removing the plastic. Looking good. There's a look from the exterior. It's a little funky, but I think it'll get the job done. and improve airflow a lot. Here's like the, what do you call it? It's like the window frame of the fan vent on the inside. You just cut it to the depth that you want it. Take a hacksaw, screw it in place. Make sure to keep the wires out, or if you have a place to run them, put them there. And then at the end of a long day, bring it back in. Now that everything's put together, I apply the ProFlex RV seal again to pretty much everywhere that I can, all the cracks, all the screw holes, everywhere. So that's the fan. We'll get to the wiring for it in a little bit. Moving on to the interior a little bit, I had this problem where the frame for the bench/bed, it was only held in place with like staples. You couldn't sit on this thing without it just collapsing in on itself. First order of business, get that piece of framing lined up where it's supposed to be, put new glue in, press it down, and let it dry. I didn't trust just the glue, so I made these supports, and they fit in there just like this, so that they can kind of disperse the load. And I just screwed them in on top and on bottom, 2 screws each, I think, pre-drilled the hole. I think that'll add some extra support for sure. I was happy with that.
Oh yeah! Startified.
Now here I am removing the post hole for the post table. My camper didn't come with the table, so I'm just gonna get rid of this. Screws all stripped, so I had to drill it out. You know how it goes. Gonna put a different table in, I think. Just a small foldable one. Alright, next up is fixing this cracked lid on the front box compartment. As you can see, severe damage. So somebody tried to tape it up with duct tape, so I am scraping all that off so I can do a more permanent repair. Score the area with a razor blade. Then I used this old cutting board. It's like a thin one, it's pretty flexible, and I just cut it to shape to work basically like a plastic band-aid. Then I applied some JB Weld, the plastic version. So I applied that to the cracked area to bond them together. After letting that sit overnight, I put a bunch of this construction adhesive on the back, and then I applied the cutting board. So then I put more glue around it, and so far it's held really well. The other side was cracked a little bit too. I don't know if I showed it, but I put some more of that sealant on the exterior, so now we have a front bin, fully functional. Okay, now on to more of a structural repair. I was having this problem where when you close the camper, there's interference from the bending roof trim, and the roof panel kind of like hits the body, and this is being caused by the springs being like too strong, or just this thin metal wearing out. So I had to reinforce it. And I found this good tutorial on a YouTube channel called Going Nowhere Fast, where he does this reinforcement. So I'll link that in the description. So the problem really comes from the springs on the inside of the roof panels bowing out the metal trim and then causing separation, and that probably caused a lot of my water damage in the past. So what I'm doing here is cutting this piece of 2" by 2" angle aluminum, 2 inches on one side and then 1 inch on the other side. And then on the roof here, I'm grinding down some old rivets and making a nice clean surface, getting some old glue off. So here I have the angle aluminum in place. It's going to reinforce that side of the roof. I'm going to drill some holes and put some rivets in. This is just going to give it more stiffness so that it can't pull away from the roof and compromise that seal. You can see I cut these 2 little gaps out for the rivets that are in place that need to stay. My camera died because it was cold out, but drilling a bunch of holes, putting a bunch of rivets in. Now with the roof reinforced, it's time for me to redo all the seals. First step, scrape all the old stuff off, of course. Next, I got this pipe insulation, which seems like the most economical and useful type. It's a little thinner than like a pool noodle, but it's basically the same material. And I got this idea from Slim Potato Head, I think, another YouTube channel with good information on A-liners. I'll link him below. So you just get it in place, and then you can remove the sticky part. But the sticky part doesn't really make a difference, to be honest. So I put one full one, cut out this area for the lever. It was a little big, so I had to kind of modify all these connections. I know it'll give me a good seal. That's what I wanted. So this stuff's pretty cheap too. It's like $4 for an 8-foot piece. Only needed 2 or 3 of them total. Now onto the body seals where the roof walls pop up. Scrape this old one off and then replace it with this closed cell foam. I think this was 1 inch wide and I just cut it in half. That's really all I needed to do for the seals. I put some more of this along the doorway, which I didn't put on video. The seals, pretty simple. The most important part is that pipe insulation. The propane system restoration starts with removing the fridge. I didn't need this fridge. It's a propane/electric fridge. Just undid all the screws in the front and then disconnected all the connections at the back. There are wires and a propane line, so nice to have that out. Big open space. Gonna put the new fridge in its place, but to take care of the propane system, I have to close off that open propane line. As you can see here, my finger is pointing to the line that the fridge was using. The bottom one is just the feed from the tank outside. The one that goes to the right goes to the heater, and the one that goes up goes to the stove. So I want to keep the heater and I want to keep the stove, but I don't need the fridge, so we're gonna put a cap on it. This is the cap that I used. It's a 3/8 inch flare cap. You'll also need some thread tape. This yellow one is rated for propane and natural gas, I think. So put a couple loops around the threads with the tape. Think 2 or 3 layers at the most. Then screw on the end cap and then tighten it down. And spray test with soapy water to check if there's leaks. Sprayed it. Then I went outside to turn on the propane. Waited a while. Inspected the area. Thankfully I had no leaks. Here I am testing the stove because I couldn't test the things that use propane while the fridge was disconnected like that. So it turned on. Couldn't see, but that was awesome. Excited to cook some food on it later. And then I did a leak test with the soapy water just at all other connections between the tank and the appliances. And I found this one right at the top nozzle that connects to the tank. It was a really minor leak, but I don't want to be wasting any propane. And it was an easy fix. I replaced this front tube. It goes from the regulator, which is attached to the frame, to the tank. It's like probably $20 part. Easy replacement. So then testing the heater, I figured out I had some problems with like the thermostat here. There was just like some corrosion and pieces of metal were sticking, so it wasn't sending a signal to turn on the heater. If you're having problems with your heater, check there. But eventually I got the thermostat working, fired right up, and within a minute or so, hot air is blowing out, which is pretty awesome. Here I am just turning it off, and just be aware of this. Once you turn it off, it takes 30 seconds or 15 seconds, a little cool down cycle where the fan keeps running, but the gas is cut off, and then it finally shuts down. So thankfully that was all working nicely. Propane system, check. Now on to the electrical system. You can see me here removing the old battery. As I took things apart, I just tried to make mental note of where everything was connected. So got the battery out, and then I don't even know what you call this, but it was like, maybe it's an inverter, power inverter. All the wires from all the appliances in the camper come here, meet at this box. I was on the fence of whether I should remove it or not, but I decided I would just build my own system so I could maintain it myself and simplify things and hopefully save weight and save energy in the process. It's kind of a nest. I just slowly took everything apart, detached the inverter, got that thing out of there slowly but surely. Then before moving on, we had to collect our dead roaches for the archive, previous inhabitants. Rest in peace. They probably felt winter for the first time and were like, oof. Now you see me labeling all the wires that go to the appliances, like the lights and the heater and the fan, and putting connections on them so that I can attach them to my fuse panel, which you see on the right. Back to the fan wiring, just attached some 12 gauge wires to the fan and ran them along the ceiling, down through the seat area, and over to that battery compartment where I'm going to put my new battery. And I just taped them onto the wall. I don't have any better connectors than that for now. Now that all the wires are run and that they're labeled and I know what they are, I got out the fuse panel and started connecting things. And of course, you fuse to the size of the wire to make sure the size of the wire is right for the appliance based on its power needs. This was pretty simple. I really had 4 or 5 or 6 different things connected. 2 lights, the fan, the heater, and then later I would add a propane sensor for safety. So now I'm attaching the battery to give it a final test. I'm using a 50 amp hour 12 volt lithium iron phosphate battery, and I previously used this in my car setup, so I just transferred the fuse panel and the battery from my car to the camper. So turn that switch on, test out the lights. Boom, light. Yeah. Other light. Oh yeah. Fan. That's pretty cool. Unlimited power.
I tucked all that down in there. I think that'll stay in there. I think that's pretty good access. I can reach everything.
that's the electrical system for now. I kind of just stuffed it all in there, put that thing back on, and boom, it's like it never happened. Here's the propane sensor that I was talking about. It's supposed to beep if there's a leak of propane. I will have that and a separate carbon monoxide alarm just in case I run the heater at night sometime. Yeah, I'm going to mount it right there. Last but not least for the electrical system is this battery monitor. You just have to connect it in a certain way to the battery and to the fuse panel. You can measure the output and the energy consumed. I thought this was a good addition so you can monitor the state of your battery, of course. So yeah, ran those wires around this cabinet and to the battery, and then cut this hole out, set it in right there. Nice and easy to see. If you're wondering how I'm gonna charge my battery, I was gonna put a solar panel on the roof, but I realized that I can just connect a battery charger to my bigger power station and plug my solar panels into the bigger power station. So everything is kind of modular and I don't need to make any permanent installation on the roof. Had to replace this one side marker, turn signal light sort of thing. Pretty simple, just bought a similar one and replaced it. You know how it goes. Electrical system, check. Let's go! Okay, last but not least, let me give you a rundown of the water system. First, I took the old water pump out and water hosing. And I also removed the old water tank. I actually had to cut it in half to get it out because of whatever reason, how it was put together. And then, time for the new stuff. Replace the old sink with this thing. And underneath, this one is for the fresh water. In there. And then sink right here to the wastewater tank. This one's good, this one's bad. But check it out. Press the button. Running water. Pretty awesome. Mom made all these curtains for me, so thank you, Mom, and check it out how they all look in here. Good for blocking the sun or for some privacy. Thank you, Mom. These are a great addition. So in the end, here's the after, the final look of everything put together. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Hopefully it was helpful. I know that was a lot, but I felt it was important to share. If you want a full tour video of the camper while I'm using it, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Hope you all have a good day. I'll see you later.